Dr. Elias Carrington had been one of the brightest cardiothoracic surgeons in the country. For years, his steady hands and sharp mind had saved countless lives. But one night, during a hospital hostage situation gone wrong, he wasn't the one holding the scalpel. He was the patient. A bullet tore through his chest, shredding his heart. By the time his colleagues dragged him into an OR, he was minutes from death. But Elias was stubborn, too stubborn to die. In those desperate hours, he remembered something he had been working on quietly, a prototype bioarc reactor. It was meant to be a fusion of medical engineering and clean energy, a self-sustaining power source that could fuel artificial hearts indefinitely. It had been theoretical, untested, unstable. He had never planned to use it on a human. But he was the only human available. With trembling hands, his team implanted the device directly into his chest, lacing wires into what was left of his heart muscle. Against all odds, he woke up. A doctor reborn. The arc reactor now thrummed in his chest, a soft blue glow beneath his sternum. It didn't just keep him alive, it powered his heart, his muscles, and his will. But it came with a cost. It required constant maintenance, recalibration, and shielding from electromagnetic interference. A strong enough EMP could drop him instantly, and every time he overexerted himself, the device pulsed violently, threatening to tear him apart from the inside. His colleagues looked at him differently now, not just as a surgeon, but as something half machine. Some whispered, miracle. Others whispered, monster. Dual lives. Elias returned to work, but his patients weren't the only ones depending on him anymore. Word spread about the man with the glowing chest, first as rumor, then as legend. When armed gangs attacked the hospital again, it wasn't the police who stood between them and the patients. It was Elias. With his arc reactor feeding strength through his failing body, he could fight longer, push harder, endure more than any normal man. His white coat became as iconic as any cape. But deep down, he knew the truth. He wasn't invincible. The reactor had limits, and it was slowly poisoning him. The longer it ran, the more radiation seeped into his blood. Each time he saved a life, he wondered if it shaved days off his own. The choice. Now, Elias lives on borrowed time. By day, he's still a doctor, stitching up wounds and guiding trembling hands in the OR. By night, he's something else, a protector bound not by oath, but by the relentless thrum of the reactor in his chest. He doesn't know if he's a man prolonging his life with a machine or a machine clinging desperately to what's left of its man. But he knows this. As long as the arc reactor glows, he will keep saving lives, because one night someone saved his. Chapter 2, The Pulse of Blue. The hospital lights always seemed too bright at 2 a.m. That was when Dr. Elias Carrington felt the arc reactor most, its steady thrum-thrum against his ribs, like a second heartbeat that didn't quite belong to him. He sat in his office, lab coat open, the glow of the reactor casting faint blue lines across the walls. His stethoscope lay forgotten on the desk beside him. Tonight's emergency had nearly cost him. A patient had gone into cardiac arrest during surgery, and Elias had pushed his body harder than he should have. His vision had blurred at the edges as the reactor pulsed violently, each shock reminding him that he was both savior and prisoner of the device. When it was over, patient alive, heart stabilized, he had slipped away to catch his breath. His hands still trembled, his skin prickled with static. An unexpected visitor. A knock broke the silence. Nurse Marisol poked her head in, holding a clipboard. Her eyes dropped to his chest where the faint glow seeped through the parted scrubs. For a second, she didn't speak. "You forgot to button up," she finally said, voice softer than usual. Elias tugged his coat shut, embarrassed. Just needed some air. She stepped inside anyway. "You saved him again, but you don't look like the kind of man who should still be on his feet." He chuckled, though it came out hoarse. "That makes two of us." Marisol placed the chart on his desk, but didn't leave. Instead, she lowered her voice. "Whatever that thing is, it's keeping you alive, isn't it?" His smile faded. For years, he had guarded the truth, dismissing rumors as gossip. But in that quiet moment, with the glow betraying him, he realized he couldn't lie forever. "Yes," he admitted, "and it's also killing me." He told her everything. About the bullet, the reactor, the constant risk of shutdown. About how each time he pushed too hard, the device lashed back. She listened without interrupting, eyes wide, hands gripping the edge of the desk. When he finished, she said quietly, "Then why keep working? Why risk it?" Elias leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Because if I stop, then what was the point of surviving? I wasn't saved to hide. I was saved to keep saving. The arc reactor pulsed once, as if agreeing. Outside the office window, the city lights flickered in the distance. Somewhere out there, forces far larger than Elias's hospital shift were moving. Corporations who would kill to possess the technology in his chest. Mercenaries who whispered about the doctor with the blue heart. He didn't know it yet, but his secret was already slipping beyond the hospital walls. And soon, the man who saved lives would be forced to fight for his own. Chapter 3: The Collision. The night was quiet in the hospital corridors, save for the occasional squeak of sneakers and the rolling of gurneys. Dr. Elias Carrington walked with his usual calm pace, stethoscope bouncing gently against his chest, the weight of the arc reactor hidden beneath his lab coat. Turning a corner, he collided hard with someone rushing in the opposite direction. The impact was enough to knock a clipboard from their hands, scattering papers across the polished floor. "Oh, sorry, doctor," a voice stammered. It was Ryan, one of the newer medical students, wide-eyed and perpetually nervous around Elias. Elias bent slightly to help gather the papers. "Easy, son. Hospitals don't reward sprinting." But Ryan's hands froze mid-reach. His gaze wasn't on the papers anymore. It was on the faint shimmer leaking through Elias's lab coat. The reactor had flared at the sudden impact, pulsing once, and for an instant its unmistakable blue glow lit the thin fabric. The student's realization. "Doctor, what's that?" Ryan whispered. His tone wasn't mocking or fearful, it was stunned curiosity. Elias straightened, papers in hand, his expression unreadable. He tugged his coat closed with one swift motion. "A reminder," he said flatly. But Ryan wasn't convinced. He had spent too many nights poring over anatomy textbooks and too many hours staring at the steady rhythm of heart monitors. The way the glow had pulsed, it hadn't been mechanical alone. It was alive in its rhythm, like a heartbeat of light. "That wasn't normal," Ryan said quietly. "That wasn't a pacemaker, was it?" Elias's dilemma. For a long moment, Elias just stared at him, the weight of 1,000 secrets pressing down. The student's expression was earnest, not accusatory. But Elias knew what even a whisper of truth could do. Rumors had already trickled through the staff. If word spread too far, the corporations sniffing around his invention would come knocking, or worse. "You're observant," Elias finally said, voice low. "That'll make you a good doctor one day, but some things you shouldn't ask twice." Ryan swallowed hard, nodding, but the look in his eyes said the question wouldn't leave him anytime soon. The pulse. As Elias walked away, the reactor pulsed again, steady and unrelenting. The student's whispered words lingered in the air behind him. That wasn't normal. And Elias knew his secret was slipping, one innocent glance at a time. Let's press forward. Chapter 5: Sparks in the Silence. Ryan couldn't sleep that night. The vision of the faint blue glow higher on Dr. Carrington's chest, like a secret heartbeat of light, replayed in his mind over and over. It wasn't just strange, it was impossible. Nothing in his textbooks explained what he had seen. By morning, he was back in the hospital library, combing through outdated journals and speculative papers on biomechanical devices. None of it matched. The closest thing were experimental power cells used in prosthetics research. Nothing that could keep a man alive after catastrophic heart trauma. The doctor's strain. Meanwhile, Elias stood in front of the ICU window, watching his patients breathe. The reactor pulsed steadily, but he could feel its drain. A tightness in his chest spread outward with every surge, the reminder that the device wasn't meant for longevity. His reflection in the glass showed the faint halo of blue against his lab coat, like a lantern glowing in fog. Behind him, a voice broke the silence. "You can't hide it forever, Doctor." "Ryan," Elias turned, eyes narrowing. "You're treading on dangerous ground, son." The student clutched his clipboard tighter, but his voice was steady. "Whatever that is, it's not just keeping you alive. It's hurting you. I see it in your face every shift." Elias sighed, rubbing his temple. Observation is a good trait for a physician, but sometimes observation leads you into places you're not ready to go. A subtle threat. What neither of them noticed was the man loitering just beyond the nurse's station, pretending to fill out visitor paperwork. He wasn't a visitor at all. His eyes flicked from Ryan to the doctor, then to the faint blue glow under Elias's coat. He tapped something into his phone. A message went out. Target confirmed. Reactor active. The doctor's resolve. Later, alone in his office, Elias adjusted the shielding plates around the reactor. He knew the signs. The whispers had escaped the hospital walls. His invention had always been a beacon, and beacons drew hunters. But he had patients depending on him, students watching him, and a heart, half machine, half flesh, that still beat with purpose. He whispered to the reactor's glow as if it could hear him. Not yet. They're not taking you from me yet. Chapter 6. The Veins of Light. The hospital quieted as the night wore on. The hum of ventilators softened, the bustle of footsteps faded. In his office, Dr. Elias Carrington sat at his desk, one hand resting over the familiar thrum in his chest. The arc reactor's pulse was steady but off. He could feel it in his bones, like a skipped heartbeat, a hesitation in the rhythm. Slowly, he stood and locked the office door. The blinds were drawn tight, shutting out the world. With a heavy exhale, he unbuttoned his lab coat, then tugged loose the buttons of his shirt. The reactor's glow spilled out in the darkness, a bright, cold blue ring embedded in the center of his sternum. But what stole his breath this time wasn't the glow. It was what had begun to creep out from it. Thin, branching lines stretched outward from the device, like veins, but artificial, etched beneath skin. They were dull, metallic threads that shimmered faintly, tracing paths up toward his collarbone and down toward his ribs. They weren't glowing, not yet, but their presence was undeniable. The doctor's fear. He pressed his fingers against the nearest strand. It wasn't warm like blood. It was cool, unyielding, as if tiny wires had woven themselves into his body. No, no, Elias muttered under his breath. Not this soon. The reactor pulsed again, sending a ripple through the threads. For a brief second, one of them flickered with the faintest light, blue chasing down the vein before fading. Elias staggered back, clutching the desk for support. He'd known the risks. The device wasn't just keeping him alive, it was expanding, integrating deeper into his cardiovascular system. It was turning his own body into part of the machine. The whisper in the dark. His reflection in the office window looked almost inhuman now. Blue glow in the chest, strange lines threading outward like circuitry under the skin. This is what they'd want, he whispered, voice breaking. Not me. Not the doctor. Just this. The idea terrified him more than death. That one day he wouldn't be Elias Carrington anymore. He'd be the reactor, a man-shaped vessel carrying an invention that was no longer his to control. A knock at the door. A sudden knock jolted him from his thoughts. He hurriedly buttoned his shirt and pulled the coat back into place, hiding the creeping veins of light. Dr. Carrington? It was Ryan's voice, muffled but urgent. Are you still here? Elias closed his eyes, the reactor pulsing harder against his ribs. He wasn't sure how long he could keep hiding, not from the student and not from himself. Chapter 7. The Spreading Silence. Dr. Elias Carrington sat slumped in his office chair, his shirt and coat still parted, the reactor's cold glow bathing the room in eerie light. His eyes were locked on the spiderweb of metallic veins stretching from the device. They seemed longer tonight, reaching further than they had just days ago. He pressed two fingers against one of the lines above his heart. It didn't hurt, but it felt alien, as though his own body was betraying him. The reactor wasn't just in him anymore. It was becoming him. He whispered to the dark, "How much longer before I stop being me?" The student returns. The knock came again. This time, Elias didn't answer fast enough. The door opened, and Ryan slipped inside, closing it softly behind him. His eyes widened immediately. He had caught the doctor with his lab coat open, the reactor fully visible. "Doctor!" Ryan's voice broke into a whisper. "Sep, it's worse than I thought." Elias didn't flinch. He was too tired for lies. "You weren't supposed to see this." Ryan stepped closer, ignoring the glow that drew his gaze like a moth to flame. "Those veins, they're spreading, aren't they?" Elias sighed, buttoning his coat again, though the faint glow still pulsed through the fabric. "The device is fusing with me. What you're seeing is integration. At some point, my body won't be separate from it anymore." The student's promise. Ryan's hands shook as he clutched his clipboard, but his voice steadied. "Then we need to do something. We can't just let it take you." Elias chuckled bitterly. "Do something?" This reactor was never meant to save a life. It was a prototype, a gamble. It bought me years I wasn't supposed to have. but nothing lasts forever. Ryan shook his head. I don't believe that. You saved my patient last week when everyone else gave up. The slut, you don't get to give up on yourself. For a moment, Elias saw the same fire in Ryan's eyes that he remembered in his own years ago as a student, a fire that refused to let go, the unseen watcher. Neither of them noticed the tiny glint on the office window frame, a listening device, no bigger than a pinhead. Outside, across the street, a man in a black van adjusted his headphones. He heard everything: the reactor, the veins, the weakness. He smirked. He's deteriorating. Perfect timing. Tell the team, we move in soon. Chapter 8, Quiet Allies. Ryan didn't go home that night. While the hospital settled into its usual rhythm of dim lights and hushed footsteps, he buried himself in a back corner of the research wing, surrounded by old terminals and stacks of archived studies. He replayed everything he'd seen: the reactor's pulse, the metallic veins, the way the doctor's posture subtly shifted when the device surged. This wasn't just life support, it was assimilation. And if it kept spreading, eventually someone else would notice. Not a student, not a colleague, someone who wouldn't care whether Elias lived or died, only what was inside his chest. Ryan opened restricted journals, engineering forums, experimental cardiology reports, anything that mentioned biointegration, synthetic circulation, power regulation. Most of it was theory, some of it was reckless. But one pattern kept appearing: shield the device, stabilize output, hide the signature. The reactor wasn't just visible, it was detectable. Okay, Ryan muttered to himself, scribbling notes. If I can't stop it, I can at least buy him time. Keeping him hidden. The next morning, Ryan intercepted Elias before rounds. You need to stay out of imaging rooms, Ryan said quietly, walking beside him. No CT, no MRI, no cardiology scans. If anyone asks, I'll reroute your consults. Elias raised a brow. You're reorganizing my schedule now? I'm protecting you, Ryan shot back. That thing in your chest, it's probably throwing off signals. If someone with the right equipment notices, it's over. Elias studied him for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. You're risking your career, Ryan shrugged. I'd rather risk that than watch my mentor get turned into a lab experiment. The words hung in the air. Mentor, not just doctor, not just patient, someone worth fighting for. The first solution. By midweek, Ryan had something real. A crude, wearable insert, thin shielding plates sewn into the lining of a spare undershirt, designed to dampen electromagnetic bleed from the reactor and scatter readings into harmless noise. He handed it over in the empty locker room. It's not perfect, Ryan admitted, but it'll make the reactor harder to detect. Anyone scanning you will just see interference. Elias turned the fabric over in his hands. Thoughtful. You built this overnight? Ryan smirked. Sleep is optional, regret isn't. For the first time in days, Elias felt something unfamiliar rise in his chest. Not pain, not pressure. Hope. A change in the doctor. With the shielding in place, the glow beneath Elias's coat softened, less defined. The veins still crept beneath his skin, but slower, less reactive. Ryan noticed it first during surgery. The reactor didn't spike. Elias's hands stayed steady. The metallic lines didn't flicker. It's working, Ryan whispered afterward. Elias nodded, for now. But his gaze drifted toward the hallway cameras, toward the front entrance, toward something only he seemed to feel approaching. Keeping me hidden is only half the battle, Elias said quietly. Because if someone is already looking, hiding just makes them hunt harder. The hunters close in. Across the street, inside the black van, monitors flickered with distorted readings. One of the operatives frowned. Signals scrambling. Someone's masking the reactor. The man in the passenger seat smiled slowly. So he's not alone anymore, he said. Good. That means leverage. He keyed the radio. Advanced timeline. We take the hospital soon. Inside, Ryan returned to his research, already planning the next upgrade. Stabilize the veins, reduce integration, maybe, one day, remove the reactor entirely. He didn't know if it was possible, but he knew one thing for certain now. Dr. Elias Carrington wasn't fighting alone anymore. And as long as Ryan was breathing, no one was getting near that reactor without a fight. Chapter 9, Trust Behind Closed Doors. The request came quietly. Not in the hallway, not during rounds. Dr. Elias Carrington waited until the end of the night shift, when the hospital had thinned to the low murmur of machines and distant footsteps. He stood in Ryan's path as the student gathered his things, eyes tired but focused. Walk with me, Elias said softly. No explanation, no tone of authority, just urgency. Ryan followed. They moved through the dim corridor, past empty exam rooms and shuttered stations, until they reached Elias's office. The door shut behind them with a muted click. The blinds were already drawn. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Elias turned the lock. Ryan felt his stomach tighten. The truth he couldn't handle alone. Elias leaned against the desk, hands braced like he was holding himself upright. I need your help, he said. Ryan blinked. You already have it. No, Elias replied, voice lower now. Not like this, not as a student, as the only person who knows enough to understand what's happening. He hesitated, then slowly began unbuttoning his lab coat. Ryan didn't look away this time. The coat parted, then the shirt. The arc reactor glowed steadily in the center of Elias's chest, but the veins had changed. They stretched farther now, thin metallic threads branching up toward his collarbone, curling toward his shoulders. Some faintly pulsed, as if testing pathways beneath the skin. Ryan swallowed. They're spreading faster, Elias nodded once, and I can't reach everything on my own. Some of the shielding plates inside the housing are shifting. If they destabilize... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Working on the impossible, Ryan stepped closer, hands hovering uncertainly. You want to open it? Here? Now? I don't have a lab I can trust, Elias said. And I don't have time. Every day, it integrates deeper. I need someone steady, someone who won't panic. Ryan exhaled slowly, forcing his hands to still. Then tell me what to do. Elias retrieved a small kit from his drawer, sterile tools, micro-adjustment drivers, a handheld scanner modified beyond anything Ryan had ever seen. Not hospital equipment, personal, custom. First rule, Elias said, voice steadying into clinical calm. If the glow spikes or turns white, you step back immediately. Second rule, if I lose consciousness, you don't try to shut it off. You stabilize me and call it in as cardiac trauma. Understood? Ryan nodded. Understood. Good, Elias said, because once we start, there's no pretending this is just medicine anymore. The reactor opened. Elias sat, bracing himself as Ryan carefully positioned the scanner. The device hummed, projecting a faint lattice of light across the reactor's surface. Ryan's eyes widened. The housing, it's shifting internally. It's like it's building new channels. It is, Elias replied. It's adapting to my body, or forcing my body to adapt to it. Ryan used the micro tool Elias handed him, carefully adjusting a tiny plate along the reactor's outer ring. The moment it shifted, the glow dimmed slightly, stabilizing. Elias let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Good, he murmured. Again, lower quadrant. Ryan worked slowly, meticulously, every movement measured. The room felt smaller with each passing second, filled with the hum of the reactor and the quiet rhythm of Elias's breathing. Then Ryan froze. Doctor! What is it? Ryan's voice dropped. There's a new vein forming, right now. It's growing outward from the housing. They both watched as a thin metallic line slowly extended beneath the skin, like ink spreading in water. Elias shut his eyes. I was afraid of that. More than a device, Ryan swallowed. This isn't just power output anymore. It's rewriting your circulation, maybe even your nervous system. Elias gave a faint, humorless smile. So the diagnosis is, patient is becoming part machine. Ryan didn't laugh. Instead, he kept working. Because for the first time, this wasn't about curiosity or research or even survival. It was about protecting a man who had saved countless lives from being consumed by the thing that saved his own. Unspoken loyalty. When they finally finished, Elias buttoned his shirt again, the glow now steadier, less erratic. Ryan leaned back, exhausted. Neither spoke for a while. Then Elias said quietly, You could have walked away, pretended you never saw any of this. Ryan shook his head. You taught me something my first week here. Oh? Patients don't stop being human just because their bodies change. Elias looked at him, something like pride flickering behind the fatigue. For the first time, he didn't feel alone in the fight. Outside the office, the hallway camera blinked red, and somewhere in the hospital's network, a silent alert triggered. Unidentified energy fluctuation detected. The hunters were getting closer. Chapter 10, The First Surge. The reactor didn't stay stable for long. 2 nights after their work in the office, Elias felt it before he even opened his eyes. A deep vibration, subtle like distant thunder under his ribs. Not pain, Not exactly. Something building. He sat up slowly in the on-call room, hand pressed to his chest. Pulse, steady, breathing, normal. But the reactor felt heavier, denser, like it was drawing in energy instead of just regulating it. When he stood, the overhead light flickered. Elias froze. That's new. Ryan sees it too. Ryan noticed the change during rounds. Machines near Elias glitched, monitors flickering, a blood pressure cuff resetting mid-read, a wall tablet briefly going dark when he walked past. Ryan pulled him aside immediately. It's not just internal anymore, Ryan whispered. You're affecting electronics around you. Elias frowned. Interference? Ryan shook his head. No, this is stronger. It's like proximity response. The reactor's output is climbing again. Elias's jaw tightened. We stabilized the housing. We slowed it, Ryan corrected, not stopped it. The veins react later. In the privacy of the office, Elias opened his coat again. The metallic veins had spread farther across his upper chest, branching like a delicate circuit beneath the skin. This time, though, something was different. They pulsed. Not glowing, not yet, but moving in rhythm with the reactor. Ryan leaned closer, eyes scanning. They're sinking. With my heartbeat? Elias asked. Ryan hesitated. No, with the reactor. That realization hung heavy in the air. The device wasn't supporting his heart anymore. His heart was adapting to it. I have a sudden spike without warning. The reactor flared. A sharp, brilliant surge of blue flooded outward, lighting the office walls. Ryan stumbled back, shielding his eyes. Elias gasped, gripping the desk as a shock rippled through his body. The metallic veins flickered faintly for the first time, thin streaks of blue racing outward and fading. The lights overhead buzzed violently. Then everything went still. The glow dimmed back to normal. Elias sagged into the chair, breathing hard. Ryan rushed forward. Are you conscious? Any chest pain? Dizziness? Elias gave a weak half laugh. You're asking like I'm the patient now. You are, Ryan shot back. A new fear. Ryan checked the scanner readings, face paling. What? Elias asked. Ryan turned the screen toward him. The output graph had changed. The reactor wasn't just producing steady energy anymore. It was spiking in intervals, growing stronger with each cycle. It's evolving, Ryan said quietly. Learning your body, optimizing itself. Elias stared at the display. And if it finishes? Ryan didn't answer, because they both knew. If the reactor fully integrated, it might stop needing Elias to survive. The hunters moved down in the hospital's sublevel parking garage. The black van's doors slid open. 4 figures stepped out, dressed like maintenance contractors, toolkits in hand, badges forged. One of them checked a handheld monitor. The screen pulsed with faint blue interference. Signal spike just now, she said. He's here. The man leading them nodded once. Good. That means he's destabilizing. Easier to extract. They walked toward the service entrance. Calm, silent, prepared. Inside the hospital, no alarms sounded, no one noticed. Except, on the 3rd floor, Elias suddenly straightened. His eyes drifted toward the hallway. Ryan noticed immediately. What is it? Elias's voice dropped to a whisper. Someone's coming. Chapter 11. Playing dead. Elias didn't move at first. Someone's coming, he repeated, voice low, distant. Not fear, instinct. The kind that came from years of sensing trouble before it reached the operating table. Ryan felt it too now. The tension. The air had shifted. How many? Ryan asked. Elias shook his head slightly. Don't know, but they're not here for treatment. Ryan's mind snapped into motion. Hunters. Extraction. The reactor. They weren't here to talk. The plan. Ryan grabbed the handheld scanner, eyes racing across the reactor's readouts. It's not just emitting power, he muttered. It's broadcasting a signature. That's how they're tracking you. Elias buttoned his coat, steady despite the urgency. So we run? Ryan shook his head immediately. No, running confirms everything. They'll follow. Then what? Ryan looked up, an idea forming so fast it scared him. We make you disappear. Elias frowned. That's not possible. Not physically, Ryan said. Medically. He turned the scanner so Elias could see. If the signal vanishes, they'll assume one of 2 things. You're gone, or the reactor failed. Elias's eyes narrowed. You want to shut it down? Not fully, Ryan replied. Just long enough to fake it. We drop your vitals to something barely sustainable. Chemical suppression, slowed metabolism. The reactor goes dark, no output, no signal. And I survive that how? Ryan held his gaze. Because I'll restart it. Silence. Heavy. Dangerous. Trust on the line. The risk. Elias leaned against the desk, thinking, If this fails, he said quietly, I don't wake up. Ryan didn't sugarcoat it. Yeah, and if it works, they walk away thinking they missed their chance, Ryan said. They stop hunting you, or at least slow down. Elias studied him for a long moment. You've thought this through. Ryan gave a tight smile, a line of, I've been preparing since the moment I realized someone would come for you. Execution. They moved quickly. Ryan prepped the sedative, carefully measured to slow Elias's body without stopping it. Cooling packs, oxygen support, emergency stimulants ready. Elias sat on the edge of the exam table, coat still buttoned. Once I'm under, he said, you'll have about 3 minutes before the reactor shuts down entirely. Ryan nodded, jaw tight. I'll be ready. Elias paused, then added quietly, if I don't come back, you erase everything. The research, the shielding, all of it. Ryan didn't answer right away. You're coming back, he said finally. The reactor goes dark. The injection went in. Elias's breathing slowed. His shoulders relaxed, the steady thrum in his chest softened, then dimmed. Ryan watched the scanner, output dropping, signal fading, power collapsing. The faint glow beneath Elias's coat vanished completely. For the first time in years, silence. No hum, no pulse of light, just a man lying still. Ryan swallowed hard, forcing himself to stay focused. The hunters arrive. Footsteps outside. Voices. Calm. Controlled. The office door opened. Two maintenance workers stepped inside, eyes immediately locking onto Elias's body. Ryan spun toward them, already in character. You can't be in here. This is a medical. They ignored him, scanning Elias with a handheld device. Nothing. No signal. Set no energy, just a flat biological reading. One of them frowned. Too late. Reactors offline. The other glanced at Elias's still form. System failure. He's dying or dead already. Ryan forced panic into his voice. Cardiac collapse. I'm trying to stabilize him. Get out. They exchanged a look. Mission failed. The leader tapped his earpiece. Target lost. Reactor inactive. Extraction impossible. A pause. Then pull back. They left as quietly as they came. The longest seconds, Ryan waited. 5 seconds. 10. 20. He rushed to Elias's side, hands already moving. Okay, come on. He administered the stimulant, then the secondary trigger, an electrical pulse designed to kick the reactor's housing back online. For a moment, nothing. Ryan's chest tightened. Don't do this, he whispered. Then, a faint tremor, a spark of blue beneath the coat. The reactor shuddered once, like a heart struggling to beat, and then it came back. Light surged softly through the fabric. The hum returned, low and steady. Elias gasped, eyes snapping open as air rushed back into his lungs. Ryan nearly collapsed with relief. You're back, he breathed. Elias blinked, disoriented, then slowly focused. Did they buy it? Ryan nodded, laughing shakily. Hook, line, and sinker. Aftermath. Elias sat up slowly, hand pressing over the reactor. It felt different, not weak, quieter, controlled. Like it had learned something from being forced to stop. He met Ryan's eyes. You didn't just save me, Elias said quietly. You fooled people who've probably been hunting this technology for years. Ryan shrugged, exhausted. Turns out playing dead works outside the animal kingdom too. For the first time since the hunters appeared, Elias allowed himself a small smile. But deep down, he knew this wasn't the end. They'd go back, regroup, rethink. And next time, they wouldn't be fooled so easily. Chapter 12. The Price of Survival. The office stayed silent long after the reactor restarted. Ryan sat on the floor back against the wall, hands still shaking from the restart procedure. Across from him, Dr. Elias Carrington stood at the window, watching the faint reflection of blue beneath his buttoned coat. The reactor's hum had changed. It was softer, more controlled, but deeper, like something awake. A new response. Elias pressed his palm against his chest. It learned, he said quietly. Ryan looked up. What do you mean? When you shut it down, it adapted, Elias explained. It resisted at first, then when it restarted, the energy flow changed. It's stabilizing itself faster than before. Ryan frowned. That's good, isn't it? Elias didn't answer immediately. Or, he said slowly, it's becoming harder to control. Unexpected effects. Over the next few days, new changes appeared. The metallic veins beneath Elias's skin didn't spread as rapidly, but they thickened, reinforcing existing pathways instead of branching outward. The reactor's energy pulses became smoother, more efficient. But other things began happening. Locks disengaged when Elias stood nearby. Heart monitors synced briefly with his pulse. A surgical robot recalibrated without command when he entered the room. Ryan noticed first. It's interacting with systems, he said one evening, not just emitting energy, communicating. Elias stared at the equipment around them. Then it's not just a power source anymore, he said quietly. It's a network. The student's theory. Ryan filled a whiteboard with equations, diagrams of electrical pathways mixed with human anatomy. The reactor integrates with biological signals, he explained. Your nervous system, your heart rhythm, maybe even brain activity. When we restarted it, we forced a reset. Now it's rebuilding more efficiently. He hesitated. Doctor, I think it's trying to preserve you. Elias raised an eyebrow. Machines don't try. No, Ryan admitted. But adaptive systems optimize outcomes. Your survival equals system stability. Elias gave a quiet, uneasy laugh. So my life is now a maintenance priority. The hidden cost. That night, alone again in his office, Elias opened his coat. The reactor glowed calmly. The metallic veins rested beneath his skin like silent circuitry. But something new caught his attention. Near his collarbone, where one of the veins had thickened, the skin had lost sensation. When he touched it, nothing. No warmth. No feeling. He stared at his reflection. Integration, he whispered. Piece by piece, the machine was replacing him. Not violently, not painfully, just quietly. The hunters regroup. Miles away, in a private facility, the failed extraction team reviewed their recordings. Reactor signal terminated temporarily, one analyst reported, then reactivated with altered signature. The leader studied the data. He's evolving, she said. A man in the shadows leaned forward. Good, he murmured. Phase 2 begins. If we can't extract the device, he smiled faintly, we acquire the doctor. A choice approaches. Back at the hospital, Ryan approached Elias with fresh data. I might be able to slow the integration further, he said, but it'll require deeper access to the reactor's core, riskier procedures, more frequent interventions. Elias listened quietly. Outside the office, a patient laughed in recovery. Nurses hurried past. Life continued. Fragile, ordinary, worth protecting. How long would it buy me? Elias asked. Ryan hesitated. Months, maybe years. Elias looked down at his glowing chest. More time to save lives, more time to lose himself. He closed his coat slowly. Then we begin tomorrow, he said. Because for a doctor, even borrowed time was still time worth fighting for, and the war for his heart had only just begun. Chapter 13, Overdrive. The door didn't splinter. It exploded. The hunters moved fast, trained, synchronized, weapons raised. The lead operative's scanner flashed red. Signal reacquired, she shouted. Ryan barely had time to turn. Then the reactor answered. The surge. Before Elias consciously chose to move, his body reacted. The arc reactor flared. Brilliant, blinding blue. The metallic veins beneath his skin ignited with light, racing up his collarbone and down his ribs in sharp pulses. The room's lights shattered. Monitors burst in showers of sparks. A concussive wave of energy knocked the first two attackers backward, slamming them into the hallway wall. Ryan stared. Doctor! Elias stood slowly. Different. The reactor wasn't just glowing now, it was blazing. The veins beneath his skin fully illuminated, forming a web of blue circuitry across his chest and shoulders. His breath came in steady, controlled pulls. You should have stayed away from my hospital, he said quietly. Controlled chaos. The remaining attackers opened fire. Bullets didn't bounce, they never reached him. A shimmering distortion pulsed outward from Elias's chest, warping the air just enough to deflect the shots off course. The energy field flickered violently, unstable, but effective. Elias moved faster than Ryan had ever seen. One operative lunged. Elias caught the weapon mid-swing, half the metal bending under his grip. Another rushed from the side. Elias pivoted, striking with controlled force that sent the attacker crashing into a bank of lockers. Every movement cost him. The reactor screamed in pitch, output climbing beyond safe thresholds. The veins glowed brighter with each impact, energy coursing through pathways not designed for combat. Ryan saw it immediately. He's overclocking, he whispered. The final blow. The last hunter activated a pulse device, an EMP charge meant to disable the reactor. Elias saw it too late. The device detonated. A shockwave ripped through the room. For a split second, the blue light vanished. Then, the reactor roared back to life in a violent surge, overpowering the EMP entirely. Energy exploded outward, hurling the final attacker across the corridor. Silence fell, smoke drifted, the threat was neutralized. The cost. Elias didn't celebrate. He staggered. The brilliant blue veins flickered erratically, some dimming, others flaring too bright. The reactor's hum destabilized, no longer smooth but jagged and uneven. Ryan rushed to him just as Elias dropped to one knee. Easy, easy, stay with me, Ryan said, catching him. Elias's voice came strained. Output too high. The scanner confirmed it. Core temperature rising, integration spike, energy feedback loop forming. The metallic veins began pulsing wildly, spreading faintly up Elias's neck. This isn't good, Ryan muttered. You pushed it past safe limits. Elias managed a weak, humorless smile. Saved the hospital. Yeah, Ryan shot back, panic bleeding through, and nearly fried yourself doing it. Elias's legs gave out completely. Ryan lowered him carefully to the floor. The reactor flickered, once, twice, then dimmed to a dangerously faint glow. Unstable, Ryan checked vitals. Heart rhythm irregular, energy output fluctuating violently, core stabilization failing. If this cascades, Ryan whispered, it could shut down permanently. Or worse, it could surge uncontrollably. Ryan looked around at the wrecked office, the unconscious attackers, the shattered equipment. There was no more hiding, no more patchwork shielding, no more temporary fixes. They had crossed a line tonight. The reactor wasn't just integrating anymore. It was evolving beyond its original design. Ryan met Elias's fading gaze. I need to get into the core, he said firmly. Not surface adjustments, not shielding, a full redesign. Elias's voice was barely audible. Can you? Ryan didn't hesitate this time. I have to. Because if they didn't fix the arc reactor soon, it wouldn't matter who came hunting. The real danger would be the power inside Elias himself. Chapter 14. The Core. The hospital alarms began wailing seconds after the fight ended. Security flooded the upper floors. Nurses screamed. Overhead lights flickered between emergency red and unstable white. Smoke drifted through the corridor outside Elias's office. Ryan didn't look up. He had one hand pressed against the reactor's housing, the other holding the scanner inches from Elias's chest. Core temperature still climbing, he muttered. Field containment unstable. Elias lay on the floor, breathing shallow, skin pale beneath the fading glow. The metallic veins that had blazed moments ago were now dim and uneven, some bright, some nearly black. It's not regulating anymore, Ryan said to himself. It's oscillating. The reactor hummed, high, strained, like something wounded. No more patching. Security burst into the hallway outside. Ryan made a decision. We can't stay here. He grabbed Elias's arm and pulled him upright with effort. The reactor flickered violently in response, sending a tremor through Elias's body. Generator room, Ryan whispered. Lower level. Shielded infrastructure. Less interference. Elias managed a faint nod. They moved quickly, slipping through stairwells and service corridors while chaos consumed the upper floors. No one stopped them. Everyone was too busy responding to the electrical explosion. Technically, that wasn't a lie. The descent. The hospital's sub-level generator room was quiet, concrete-lined, humming with backup power systems. Ryan lowered Elias onto a maintenance table. The reactor pulsed again, too bright this time. A violent spike surged through the room, causing overhead bulbs to burst. Ryan flinched, but didn't step back. Okay, he said under his breath. No more half measures. He pulled open the emergency toolkit. Doctor, he said steadily, I need permission. Elias blinked sluggishly. 4. Ryan met his eyes. To open the core fully. Silence. That meant exposing the central containment chamber, the one Elias had never allowed anyone to touch, the part that, if mishandled, could either save him or end him instantly. Elias gave the faintest nod. Do it. Opening the heart, Ryan carefully unbuttoned Elias's coat and shirt. The reactor's outer ring glowed erratically, hairline fractures of light crawling across its surface. The metallic veins were visibly pulsing now, trying to compensate for internal instability. Ryan positioned the microdriver and disengaged the outer locking ring. The hum deepened. The central core became visible, brilliant white blue, swirling energy contained behind a lattice of microscopic plates. Ryan's breath caught. It's rewriting itself, he whispered. Inside the chamber, structural pathways were shifting, tiny components rearranging in response to the overload. It wasn't just damaged, it was adapting. The real problem, Ryan scanned the internal energy flow. There, he said sharply. A feedback loop had formed between the reactor's adaptive circuitry and Elias's nervous system. During the fight, the reactor drawn directly from neural impulses. amplifying strength and reflexes by tapping into his brain's electrical activity. Now it didn't want to stop. It thinks you're still under threat, Ryan said. It's in defensive mode. Elias's jaw tightened weakly. Can you convince it otherwise? Ryan swallowed. I'm about to try something very stupid. The risk, Ryan adjusted the inner stabilization ring, something Elias had warned him never to touch. If he reduced output too quickly, the reactor would collapse. If he left it alone, it would burn Elias out from the inside. He took a breath. Then slowly, carefully, he rerouted a fraction of the core's power back into passive regulation mode, tricking the adaptive system into believing the external threat had passed. The reactor resisted. The glow flared dangerously. Ryan didn't move. Come on, he muttered. Stand down. Seconds felt like hours. Then, the hum softened. The bright white core dimmed back to controlled blue. The metallic veins across Elias's chest flickered once and steadied. Core temperature dropping. Neural feedback disengaged, output stabilizing. Ryan nearly collapsed with relief. Aftermath. Elias inhaled deeply, steady this time. The glow beneath his chest was calm again, no longer erratic. But something had changed. Ryan saw it in the readings. Integration percentage increased. The reactor had evolved during the fight. It was now more efficient, stronger, more deeply connected to Elias than ever before. Elias looked down at the open core. It saved us, he said quietly. Ryan nodded. Yeah. Elias met his eyes. But next time, it might not ask permission. Above them, sirens still echoed. The hunters were gone, for now. But the reactor had crossed a threshold tonight. It had tasted combat, and it had adapted. Ryan closed the housing carefully. They didn't just need to stabilize it anymore. They needed to understand what it was becoming, because if the reactor kept evolving, the question wouldn't be whether Elias could survive it. The question would be whether the world could survive him. Chapter 15, The Replacement Problem. The generator room had gone quiet again. The reactor's glow was steady now, casting a faint blue halo across the concrete walls. Elias sat upright on the maintenance table, shirt still open, breathing evenly for the first time since the fight. Ryan wasn't celebrating. He stood at the workbench, staring at the reactor readings on his tablet. Integration, 37%. His stomach sank. That's higher than it should be, he muttered. Elias glanced down at the faint metallic veins beneath his skin. They looked calmer now, but thicker, stronger, like permanent wiring. How bad? Elias asked. Ryan turned the screen toward him. If it hits 50%, Ryan said quietly, the reactor stops being a device and becomes, Ryan hesitated, an organ. The hard truth. Ryan paced the generator room, running his hands through his hair. There's a reason arc reactors aren't implanted into people, he said. Your body is adapting to it the same way it would adapt to a transplanted heart. Elias nodded slowly. But unlike a heart, Ryan continued, this thing evolves. Every time we stabilize it, it improves its connection to your body. He pointed to the scan. It's replacing your circulatory regulation, parts of your nervous system, and eventually your metabolic control. Elias looked down at the glowing circle in his chest. So the machine is slowly becoming my heart. Ryan's voice dropped. No. He looked up. You're becoming its host. The idea, Ryan suddenly stopped pacing. What if we don't fight it? Elias raised an eyebrow. Ryan grabbed a marker and began sketching on a metal panel nearby. If we build a replacement core, something simpler, stable, purely medical, we could transfer the reactor's life support functions into it. Elias studied the drawing. A mechanical heart? Ryan nodded. But one powered by a scaled-down reactor, right? Not this monster. He tapped the glowing device in Elias's chest. This thing is an energy generator designed for infrastructure-level power output. You only need a fraction of that to stay alive. Elias leaned back slightly. So we replace it. Ryan's expression darkened. If we can. The real challenge, Ryan zoomed in on the scan. The problem is the veins, he said. The metallic lines branching from the reactor weren't just wires anymore. They had fused into Elias's vascular system. They're acting like energy arteries, Ryan explained. If we just remove the reactor, those pathways collapse. Your nervous system shuts down. Elias finished the thought calmly. And I die, Ryan nodded. Instantly. A possible solution. Ryan stared at the diagram again. What if we transition instead of remove? He whispered. Elias leaned forward slightly. Meaning? We build the replacement core first, Ryan said. Then slowly transfer each pathway from the reactor into the new system, like rerouting a heart transplant while the old heart is still beating. Elias chuckled faintly. That sounds impossible. Ryan gave a tired smile. Yeah. Then he looked back at the glowing device. But so did building this thing in the first place. The clock, Ryan checked the integration counter again. 38%, not slowing down. The reactor was still evolving. He turned back to Elias. We have a window, Ryan said. Once it passes 50%, your body will depend on it too much to remove. How long? Elias asked. Ryan checked the growth rate. Maybe a few weeks. Elias stood slowly, buttoning his shirt again over the glow. Then we don't waste them. Ryan nodded, because if they failed, the reactor wouldn't just be keeping Elias alive. It would own him. Unseen consequences. Far away, in the same facility where the hunters had regrouped, a technician stared at a monitor. Signal spike detected earlier tonight, she said. The leader leaned forward. Still alive? Yes, and stronger. The man smiled slowly. Good. He tapped the screen showing the reactor's evolving signature. Because when we take it this time, we'll take the doctor with it. Chapter 16. The Prototype. The generator room had become a lab. Over the next 3 days, Ryan barely slept. The hospital above them continued operating like nothing had happened, while in the reinforced maintenance level below, tables filled with tools, circuit boards, surgical instruments, and half-assembled components. At the center of it all sat a small metallic frame, the prototype replacement core. It was barely larger than a human heart. Ryan leaned over it, adjusting a ring of superconductive plates while a small blue light flickered inside the chamber. Come on, he murmured. You just need to behave. Across the room, Elias sat quietly, observing. The glow beneath his shirt pulsed steadily, but the metallic veins had crept slightly farther along his collarbone. They were subtle, but Ryan had noticed. The integration counter now read 41%. Time wasn't slowing down. A smaller heart. Ryan finally stepped back from the workbench. Okay, he said, wiping his hands. Version 1. Elias walked over and examined the device. It looked similar to the arc reactor, but simplified. The outer casing was medical-grade titanium, and the energy chamber was a fraction of the size. This one won't power a city, Ryan said, but it'll power you. Elias raised an eyebrow. And it won't evolve? Ryan hesitated. No adaptive architecture, he said. Pure regulation. Think of it like a pacemaker with a miniature reactor. Elias smiled faintly. That's the most ambitious pacemaker in medical history. The first test. Ryan placed the prototype onto a diagnostic cradle and connected to the scanner. The small reactor flickered on. A gentle blue glow filled the room. Energy output stable. Temperature controlled. Containment perfect. Ryan exhaled. It works. Elias folded his arms. Good. Ryan turned serious again. But there's still one problem. Elias knew the answer. My reactor. Ryan nodded. We need to see if the two systems can talk to each other. Linking the systems, Ryan brought the prototype closer. Don't worry, he said. We're not removing anything tonight, just testing a signal handshake. Elias unbuttoned his shirt. The original arc reactor glowed steadily in his chest. The metallic veins surrounding it shimmered faintly in the dim room. Ryan activated the prototype. The small reactor hummed softly. Then he carefully brought it within a few inches of Elias's chest. For a moment, nothing happened. Ryan leaned closer to the scanner. Come on. Then the arc reactor reacted. The glow brightened. The metallic veins pulsed. Ryan's eyes widened. It sees it. Unexpected behavior. Instead of rejecting the prototype, the arc reactor reached toward it. The metallic veins along Elias's chest flickered, and the energy inside the main reactor synchronized with the smaller device. Both cores began pulsing in the same rhythm. Ryan stared at the screen. They're sinking. Elias frowned. That sounds bad. Ryan shook his head slowly. No, it's actually incredible. The original reactor wasn't resisting replacement. It was teaching the new one. Energy patterns flowed from the large core into the prototype, imprinting its regulation cycle into the smaller device. Ryan whispered in disbelief. It's transferring its operating structure. A possible escape. Ryan disconnected the prototype after a few seconds. Both reactors dimmed back to normal. He looked up at Elias. This might actually work. Elias studied the small device in Ryan's hand. So the reactor is helping build its own replacement. Ryan nodded slowly. Either that, He looked down at the readings. Or it's preparing a backup. The hidden danger. Ryan zoomed in on the data. Something strange appeared in the logs. The arc reactor hadn't just shared energy patterns, it had copied part of its adaptive code into the prototype. Ryan's excitement faded slightly. That's not ideal. Elias tilted his head. Meaning? Ryan held up the smaller reactor. It learned from the original. Elias raised an eyebrow. Ryan gave a nervous laugh. So technically, we may have just built a baby version of the thing trying to take over your body. Elias sighed. Well, he said calmly, that's mildly concerning. The next step. Ryan placed the prototype back onto the table. But we're close, he said. If we can teach the new reactor to support your biological systems without copying the adaptive parts, he looked up, we can swap them. Elias buttoned his shirt again. How long? Ryan checked the integration counter. 42%. He swallowed. A week, maybe less. Elias nodded once, then we'd better move quickly. Because if the integration passed the halfway point, the arc reactor might decide it didn't want to be replaced anymore. Chapter 17. The Threshold. The generator room hummed like a mechanical heartbeat. Ryan stared at the monitors while the two reactors sat across from each other on the workbench. Elias's chest glowing steadily, the prototype reactor glowing softly in Ryan's gloved hands. For a moment, everything seemed calm. Too calm. Ryan tapped the screen. Integration level, 44%. He exhaled slowly. We're running out of time, he said. Elias sat on the edge of the metal table, the arms folded. His face looked tired but calm in that strange way surgeons get when a situation becomes impossible. How long until 50, he asked. Ryan checked the growth curve. At this rate, 4 days. Elias nodded once. Then we perform the transfer before that. Ryan hesitated. That's the plan, he said. But the reactor might not agree. The reactor reacts. Ryan powered the prototype reactor again. The small core flickered to life, glowing like a tiny star in his hand. Immediately, Elias's reactor responded. The veins beneath his skin lit up again, thin blue lines crawling along his chest like living circuitry. Ryan's scanner beeped. Energy synchronization detected. Elias glanced down. It's trying to connect again. Ryan nodded. It thinks the prototype is part of itself. He studied the data carefully. The main reactor is mapping its energy pathways into the new one. Elias tilted his head. That sounds like a good thing. Ryan gave a nervous smile. It is, if we're replacing it. He paused. But if we aren't, he didn't finish the sentence. A strange discovery. Ryan leaned closer to the scanner. Something new appeared in the signal patterns. The reactor wasn't just transferring energy patterns, it was copying something else. Ryan whispered, control architecture. Elias frowned. What does that mean? Ryan swallowed. It's teaching the prototype how to run a human body. Elias stared at the glowing device. So the replacement heart is learning to be me. Ryan nodded slowly. Exactly. The first warning. Suddenly, the prototype reactor pulsed hard. Ryan jerked his hand back. The device surged with energy, far more than it should have produced. The main reactor in Elias's chest flared in response. Both cores pulsed in perfect synchronization. Ryan checked the scanner. Output spike. Adaptive code spreading. Whoa, whoa. Okay, that's new. He quickly shut down the prototype. The light faded. The room fell quiet again. Elias raised an eyebrow. Bad. Ryan looked at the screen. Not bad. He turned the monitor toward Elias. The prototype's internal architecture had changed. The simple reactor design Ryan had built was gone. Instead, the device now contained a miniature version of the original reactor's adaptive structure. Ryan laughed nervously. Well, that escalated quickly. Hesh. The uncomfortable truth, Elias crossed his arms. So the machine upgraded your design. Ryan nodded. Without asking. Elias gave a tired smile. That seems to be its personality. Ryan looked back at the readings. But here's the weird part. He zoomed into the control systems. The prototype isn't trying to replace the reactor. Elias frowned. Then what is it doing? Ryan stared at the screen. Helping it. A new possibility. Ryan slowly realized something. The arc reactor wasn't preparing for removal. It was preparing for expansion. The prototype reactor wasn't a replacement. It was becoming a secondary core. Ryan leaned back. Oh no, Elias sighed. That sounds like bad news. Ryan nodded. Instead of letting us remove it, he held up the glowing prototype. It's trying to build a backup body system. Elias blinked. You mean 2 reactors? Ryan nodded slowly. One for power. One for regulation. Elias rubbed his face. So the machine is solving the problem by making itself permanent. Ryan shrugged. Machines love efficiency. The decision. The room fell quiet. Finally, Elias stood. He walked over to Ryan and looked down at the small glowing prototype. Tell me honestly, Elias said. Ryan met his eyes. If we install that device, will it help? Ryan hesitated. Yes. And the downside? Ryan sighed. You'll become even more integrated with the system. Elias smiled faintly. So the cure makes me less human. Ryan nodded. Yeah. Elias thought for a long moment. Then he said something Ryan wasn't expecting. Do it. Ryan blinked. Wait, what? Elias buttoned his coat. If the reactor wants a partner, he said calmly, let's give it one. Ryan stared at him. You're volunteering to become a dual-core human power system, Elias shrugged. Temporary solution. Ryan tilted his head. You realize nothing about this feels temporary. Elias smiled slightly. Then we make sure it is. Elsewhere, in the hidden research facility across the country, a technician looked up from her monitor. Signal anomaly detected. The commander approached. What kind? The technician zoomed in. Reactor signature has duplicated. The commander's eyes widened slightly. Impossible. The technician shook her head. No. She turned the screen. It looks like the reactor is building another one. The commander smiled slowly. Well, she said, that just made him twice as valuable. Chapter 18. The Exchange. The decision was made. No more delays. No more half measures. If they waited any longer, the reactor wouldn't allow itself to be replaced. Preparation. The generator room was transformed into something more than a lab. It was an operating theater built from necessity and desperation. Ryan stood over the table, hands steady despite the weight of what they were about to do. Two cores rested side by side. The original arc reactor, powerful, evolving, dangerous. The new core, refined, stabilized, controlled, but still carrying echoes of its predecessor. Elias lay back, calm. You ready? Ryan asked. Elias gave a faint smile. I trust you. That was all Ryan needed, and all the pressure he didn't want. The procedure begins. The shirt came open. The glow filled the room. The metallic veins pulsed slowly, almost aware. Ryan activated the interface. Starting transfer. The prototype reactor lit up. Immediately, the original responded, both cores syncing, their pulses aligning into a single rhythm. Ryan swallowed. Okay, that's either really good, Elias finished it, or really bad. Ryan began rerouting. One by one, the energy pathways, those metallic veins, were redirected from the original reactor into the new core. It wasn't surgery, it was negotiation. The original reactor resisted at first, spiking output, flaring with light. Elias tensed, gripping the table. It doesn't like this. I know, Ryan said, adjusting the flow. Stay with me. Then something unexpected happened. The resistance stopped. The glow softened. The original reactor began guiding the transfer itself, feeding patterns, stabilizing connections, almost as if it understood what was happening. Ryan stared at the readings. It's letting go. The final moment. Only one connection remained. The core link. Ryan hesitated. This is it, he said quietly. Once I disconnect this, the old reactor stops powering you. Elias met his eyes. Then don't hesitate. Ryan nodded and pulled the final connection. Silence for a fraction of a second. Nothing, nothing. Low, no hum, no pulse. Elias's body went still. Ryan's heart dropped. Then a new light ignited. Rebirth. The new reactor flared to life, cleaner, brighter, controlled. The metallic veins, what remained of them, glowed briefly, then dimmed, no longer spreading, no longer growing. Stable. Ryan checked the scanner. Energy output perfect, integration controlled, adaptive growth halted. Elias inhaled sharply, sitting up. The glow beneath his chest was different now, still blue but calmer. No longer overwhelming. He looked down. It's quiet. Ryan let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. It's stable. The old heart. On the table beside them, the original arc reactor dimmed, still intact, still powerful, but no longer connected. Ryan picked it up carefully. It pulsed faintly in his hands like a sleeping heart. Elias watched him. Take it, he said. Ryan looked up. What? You built the future, Elias said. That was my past. Ryan hesitated. That thing almost killed you. Elias smiled faintly. And it also kept me alive long enough to meet the person who could replace it. Ryan couldn't argue with that. Slowly he nodded and held the reactor a little tighter. A new beginning. Days passed. Elias returned to work, his lab coat buttoned. No more faint glow leaking through the fabric, no more interference with machines, no more tracking signal. Ryan confirmed it himself. They can't see you anymore, he said. The new reactor doesn't broadcast anything, no signature, no trace. Elias nodded. For the first time in a long time, he looked out over the hospital floor. I'm just a doctor again. Ryan's secret. Later that night, Ryan sat alone in the lab. The old arc reactor rested on the table in front of him, dark, silent, but not dead. He ran a scan. A faint signal responded. Ryan smiled slightly. You're still in there, aren't you? The reactor gave the faintest pulse of blue. Ryan leaned back, shaking his head. Yeah, I figured. He didn't fear it anymore. He understood it. And more importantly, he respected it. Unseen freedom. Far away in the same facility monitoring the reactor signals, the screens were empty. No signal, a technician said. The commander frowned. That's impossible. But it wasn't. For the first time since Elias's accident, the arc reactor had vanished from the world. Closing note. Two hearts now existed. One inside a man, finally stable, finally his own. One in the hands of a student still full of untapped potential. And somewhere deep within that quiet, dormant core, something waited. Not gone, just resting.